Hi everyone. I promised I would do a video. This is going to be just a coaster. Some of you wanted to see a gradient black background, so I will do it as a gradient. I will be using a couple different tips or pens, however you want to call them, to show the differences. And get it to stop shaking here. And don't mind my music in the background. I'm going to start out. This is the Optima small spear. Don't know if I got it hot enough. Got it on 2.5. But you'll see not so much the grain, but you can see the fibers of the wood. And this is birch ply, 3 mil. It's easier for me, I find, if you follow the fibers of the wood. And I just go over one area several times, and then I start to drag it out. And as I drag it out, the pen itself gets cooler. So the cooler the pen is, the lighter the area is going to be. It does take some practice to get used to pretty much how to get the gradient you want. Especially with different pens. I don't usually do the dark backgrounds with the spear shaders. As you can see, you just slowly build up. Remember, the speed as well as the pressure you're holding the pen will vary how dark or how light the gradient is. And hopefully you guys can see this close enough. One effect that this is good with is if you want to bring focus onto a specific item, like this is the rose in the center. So this is where if you do the corners and just do a gradient to bring it lighter inside, it will help bring the focus towards the rose. I've done this on a couple pieces as far as I'll darken the corners, but not necessarily the rest of the piece for the background. And most people that know my work know I have a thing for black backgrounds. I just think that they can make a piece really pop. Some of you beginners often question, well, how do you get a piece dark? There is no true black in this. Everything's different shades. With your wire burners, you will find, as well as your solid tip, you will find that this is going to be the large round. And this, because it's a bigger pen, it will be, we'll start on 3.5 and see how high that goes. But as I was saying, you'll find that it looks black, but it's not really. This pen, the rounds shaders are awesome for doing gradients. I will give them that. because they don't have the pointed tip. There's just something about them for gradients that I really like. I don't do the gradient work often, but when I do, this is my go-to pen usually. But you'll find even your solid tip pens with the brass tips, they all have a different tone to them. The wire tips I find are kind of like a grayish brown. The brass tips do like a reddish tinted brown or orangish tinted. And my favorite of all, if it's a large black background where I don't have a lot of details to work around, is a Butane Torch. That is the closest you will find probably to a true black background. And different woods burn different tones as well. As you can see, this is birch. It's probably the easiest for me to get a hold of, and it's cheap. So it's been my go-to for the last, well, 3.5 years now that I've been burning. But recently, I've experimented with portraits on basswood. That stuff is just, I love it. I will say, if you are comfortable with birch but still struggle, if you can afford it, basswood is amazing for portraits. I do the live edge. It's not cheap here in the UK, so that's pretty much all I will do it for, is if people commission it, or like I have that fundraiser type campaign thing where I'm doing portraits for young families of fallen officers and firefighters who've died in the line of duty. That's a hard one for me. It's a very emotional thing I'm doing, but it's rewarding as well. I think because it helps the children to see. Hopefully, this is my thought behind it, to see that not everybody's evil. That there are people that actually care, and there's good people in the world. So those portraits I am doing on the live edge basswood. And I'm also resining them, and it's completely free to the families. I've got a GoFundMe account that I set up specifically to help me afford the supplies and postage, because it's definitely not cheap. And I'm disabled, so I'm not able to work to afford it. And my art's not necessarily top on the list for sales at this point in time yet. I'm still new to the public, apparently. But anyways, as you can see, it's monotonous, but the end result is worth it. It's just literally going back over and over and over stuff and bringing it out till you get to what you want. Let me see if I've got a scrap piece of wood. I usually always have some sort of scrap around for something. Okay, this will work as a scrap. Yeah, because I can do another rose on it and cover it up. Okay. Some of you are trying to do circles, which is fine, but when you do circles, you have unevenness, I find. And I've never been able personally to stop it. It's just we pull and push in different pressures. But yeah, so that's here. I'll even turn it up because I go faster in circles. But you can see it's great for textures, especially like smoke or clouds or whatever. But that's probably where I personally would stop with the circular motions on these. Because in comparison, yeah, to me, you always get blotchy. Now I will switch over to my solid tip pen. And this one for doing dark brown backgrounds is my go-to, except for when I use the torch. This is only a dual heat. I only use it on high. It's not worth anything on low. Because it's a gradient, you don't have to necessarily go in with the airplane because you want it to touch down dark and just glide across and pick up your speed as you're going. And that will help you with getting the gradient. And another trick you can do, because some of you may or may not have a temperature control at all. One thing I will do is I will blow on the tip of it before I touch down. And you can see that it's I don't recommend this if you have any breathing issues such as COPD or emphysema or asthma. It's probably not the best way to keep your breathing, but that's the best way you can get with, for me, I think, for the gradients with this on high. Like I said, I don't have the option of a dual or more than a dual heat. But this is my go-to for my black backgrounds because you'll see I'll do it dark all the way up here because this is going to be a black background. But when you follow what I call the fibers, not so much the grain of the wood, but the fibers of the wood, you get a nice smooth burn, even with birch. It's not necessarily the easiest for gradients as far as birch. I have found that the basswood is a lot nicer for gradients because you're able to go in different tones. But yeah, just you start out slow and just keep going in faster. Use your speed and your pressure to control your temperature and your gradient color. And you just keep going over the area until you get to the color you want. Hopefully this video explains it a little bit better. See, you can go darker gradients or lighter. And because I will be going dark on all of it, because that'll help make this pop more, I will just continue over top. And for this to go dark, I just use the edge. Shaders I like the best because no matter what shader it is, they usually have straight edges, which make them really nice to get straight lines along the details. You just have to turn the pen sometimes. But one of the reasons I do like the solid tip is you can just see the carbon, the black on it. And I don't know if it's got to do with because it's brass. I'm not really sure what the reasoning is behind it. I don't know enough about metals to answer that. But I find that the brass solid tips aren't affected as much by the carbon as your wire tips. You have to clean them when they've got a lot of carbon buildup because they have a tendency to stick or kind of catch. These do, but you've got to have a whole lot on the pen before it will. I haven't used it for some woods. Bamboo will be a really bad one for any pen because that's just nasty carbon buildup all for everything you do on bamboo. Looks nice, but definitely not one of my better thoughts of or choices to burn on. Like I said, birch is probably my favorite here as far as price and availability. Basswood is phenomenal, but it's just not practical here in the UK. If I was to have a lot of commissions and people asking for it, that would be different. But as that is not the case, I save it for special occasions. Alright. I think I'm going to basically call the video done, and I might continue offline because it's just now getting ready to do the petals. after I get done with the black background, which, like I said, it's a monotonous process. Sometimes I will go in circles just if there's a lot of like if there's a space in between the fibers, like on the edges where they get cut sometimes. That's where circles are good because it helps fill in if you have a bunch of lines, which I don't really like. Some people, doesn't bother them. It's part of the wood. It's natural. They're fine with it. Others of us have issues with it. It's one of those personal preferences. But yeah, you can see some of the lines here. When you go through, you'll see the fibers. That's one thing with the torch also. When you use a torch to burn, it will separate the fibers because it's drying them out completely, dehydrating them of any moisture that they might have from the air. That's why it's dark, but it's hard to, you can't really, you won't get the shine, because if you look just right, this looks shiny and smooth. You won't get that from a torch burned background. A torch is very matte colored. I don't know if I have a piece that's been torched here. Not within reach anyways. Let's see. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. Put this down for a sec. This has been torched. This is not. You can, no matter how dark I go with a pen, this will never get as dark as this. I have even cleaned this with alcohol. But these are, I don't know if you can see, I'll try to get closer. You can just see where, this is what I talk about when I say fibers. I also call it banding occasionally. But you can feel the ridges even. And you get it more with a torched piece than you do with a pen, because the pen flattens the wood as you're burning it, and that's also why it's smooth. But that's also why you can only get so dark, because unless I leave the pen sitting on the wood and then it's just basically going to be fried, it will never get completely dark, because it's almost as if you seal the wood by pushing down and burning it with the pen. I don't know how I'm explaining it, if it makes sense or not. You'll hear people call it burnishing. That's probably the better technical term. I don't have a layman's term for it other than that, so. But yeah, these are the best I can tell you for the dark backgrounds. Like I said, speed, pressure are two biggest things. This is on high. because this is on high. Sorry, my pen got caught. Because this is on high, speed and pressure are my control. It's the only control I've got over heat. Go fast and it's lighter. Light pressure, it's lighter. Go slow and put a lot of pressure, it gets darker. Keep going over it and it just continues to get darker. The technique is the same no matter what pen you use. The advantages with those that have more heat options, you can, instead of using the speed and pressure, you can use your heat to make the adjustments. But I find if you can learn to control the pen with pressure and speed, other than when you change different pen tips, you won't usually touch your dial. Unless like with a beechwood, you're doing portraits and you're going from a skin tone to dark hair or dark background. Then you're going to change your heat temperature. But other than that, I rarely move my temperature gauges. I have to remember to turn them down. Like right now it's on just over 4 for the one that I showed you with it. And there's dark background. And I will shut this one off because it's done for the night with that one. And I will probably finish this one off maybe offline, like I said. And I will be using my small spear shader from Optima because it lets me get into the tiny little crevices I need to of the rose. But thank you for watching. Let me know if there's anything else that you want more information on as far as how to do it, or if you have any questions on what I did tonight. All right, thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.